AskReddit by AskReddit. What is the best example of kid logic you have ever seen? I desperately wanted a kitten when I was younger. Every time we went to the grocery store, I'd try and sneak cat food into the shopping cart, thinking that if we got home and unpacked it, we'd have to go out and get a cat. This one got me. That's adorable, Mayo. You ever get a cat? My grandparents' old trailer had ants. I wanted to help and knew they liked sweet things, so I added a bunch of sugar to some juice and made a trail from the house to an anthill to lead them out. It did not have the desired effect. Oh man, kids are awesome. Maybe not best but recent. My co-worker's kid lost a tooth yesterday, and the kid said he was going to wait until Sunday to put his tooth under the pillow so the tooth fairy can meet Santa. Lol. Tooth fairy. Do tooth fairies get presents? Santa, what do you want? Tooth fairy, teeth. Santa, then no. When I was 15, I used to babysit this lovely kid called Jack. He would very proudly tell people I'm 3 and hold up 3 fingers. One day, I asked him how old did he think I was. He gave this very careful consideration. 26, he said firmly. Why do you think I'm 26? I replied, mildly offended. Mummy looks after me and she's 26. You look after me too. Fair enough. I love how little kids have no concept of age. When my cousin was younger, she thought I was so old when I told her my age. I would have only been in my later teens at the time. She even said I was older than her mum, who was probably in her early 40s or late 30s. My 5-year-old grandson insists the instructions you receive with a Lego set are the constructions, and really I'm having difficulty arguing against it. That's so cute. You should email that into Lego. My husband was working at a child care center and his car was in the shop, so he needed a ride. When I arrived to pick him up, one of the children who was also getting picked up asked if I was his mom. Because that's who picks up people from daycare, moms and dads. Makes perfect sense using kid logic. I'm a single guy in my 30s. My nephews who are 3 and 6 have asked me a bunch of times why there's no mommy in my house. I tell them I have a mom. Their grandma is my mom. But they're like, but there's no mom in your house. Like it's inconceivable that adults don't come in pairs. I'm working on it, kid. I was a student teacher and bumped into one of my 7-year-old students in the morning. He was walking and told me I always step over the cracks in the sidewalk. I asked how come and expected him to say something about so I don't break my mother's back. That's an old rhyme. Instead, he said he was practicing in case there's an earthquake. As a kid, when I was mad at my mom, I would purposefully step on every crack and then feel so bad. Luckily her back is fine. Leaving the daycare center, a kid called back, bye bye. Be safe, watch out for polar bears. We are not in polar bear territory, but polar bears live in the snow, so since it snowed earlier in the day, it was only logical that we were at elevated polar bear risk. Mine was really excited for winter. We found out it was because she thought it would snow and there would be polar bears. We explained we only get a little snow, and no polar bears. Then a year or so later she was afraid to visit family to the north. Turned out it was because she thought there would be polar bears. Whenever we went on holiday, and my daughter started seeing seagulls, she'd say, look, holiday birds. My kid as a toddler invented the word next today because she knew yesterday and next but not tomorrow. My son used to say slashlight, which I think is a refined weapon used by a Jedi Knight for a more civilized time. When I was a kid, we experienced an earthquake. I ran to my mom screaming the dinosaurs are coming. I was really into the land before time, and whenever the brontosaurus walked the ground shook, so it made sense. I mean, When I lived through the Northridge earthquake as a 9-year-old, I just thought a couple of big rigs were going by our house. Unless you've lived through a couple, or are an adult with more logic, earthquake is not necessarily your first thought. 2 of the neighbor kids locked themselves out of their house while their mom went to the store. My kids invited them in, sat them at the kitchen table, gave them a drink and a snack and kept them company until their mom got back. After the kids went home, I told my kids that they had been very hospitable. My 7-year-old was very indignant. We were not. We were very nice to them. We didn't spit on anybody. You raised good people. My son once told me he had a brew after he bumped his arm. I said, I think you mean bruise. He said that it was a brew because he only had one. Can't argue with that logic. When I was really little, our preschool class grew beans in a window and my little brain decided that all food must be grown from seeds. Long story short, my mom found about 15 chicken nuggets in her flower bed when she was planting tulips. I buried Skittles in my mom's planters because the Skittles commercials back in the day would bury them, and it would rain Skittles. My 6-year-old self was like, OMG, I can have even more Skittles if I do the same. I was so disappointed it never rained Skittles. When I was like 3 or 4 years old and my family went to the beach, I stole the little sugar packets from the hotel's breakfast room and emptied them in the ocean, because I didn't like that it was so salty. Edit, typo. My sister has 2 children, ages 3 and 1. I had my first child in September, so my nephews now have a cousin. The 3-year-old insists that it is only his cousin, since he is the oldest and his younger brother will have to wait for the next one before he gets a cousin of his own. Gosh, I have 2 nephews that are 9 months apart. One was born in May of some year and the other way born in February of the next year. So for a few months of the year, they'd be the same age. Trying to make a toddler understand that just because he was born in February and February comes before May and right now they are the same age does not mean he's the older brother. He would get furious. Like, bro, IDK what to tell you, but you did not come first. 1. 2 of my kindergarten students switched coats and thought that their parents would take the wrong kid home. 2. I was talking about the gears on my mountain bike, and my daughter said my bike is a 2-speed, stop and go. I saw a meme related to number 1. 2 boys in a preschool, one black and one white, both had a buzz cut done to their hair at the same time. They were convinced they had become twins and nobody could tell them apart. My daughter was having trouble falling asleep and came to me crying that her pillow didn't work. Today I found out my pillow's been broken for years. My niece said that Santa was fat because he was pregnant, and that he was going to give birth to gingerbread men. Ah, so I've consumed the children of Santa? I was around 5 and my mom explained to me where babies came from, that girls had eggs in their tummies. Went to the doctor shortly after and I'm laying on my back as she pushes on my belly, as doctors do. Cue me moaning and telling her she's cracking my eggs. This reminds me of a story my mom told me when she was pregnant with my sis. I was 4. She took me with her to her doctor appointment. I asked her how the baby got her in tummy. She said, "Daddy, with the help of God, put it in there." I then looked around at all the other pregnant women and asked, loudly, "So did Daddy with the help of God put babies in all these other women too?" I was fly fishing a popular canoeing river when 2 middle school aged kids came paddling down in a rented canoe. They got turned 180 degrees in an eddy and instead of trying to turn their whole canoe back around they just turned around in their seats and started paddling downstream again. Most adults would try paddling back around but this was by far the more efficient way to handle it. I'm trying to convince myself otherwise, but yeah, I think I would fight trying to turn the canoe around. A friend's kid cut a big chunk out of his hair, then realized he'd get in trouble, so he carefully laid the hair on his head. It promptly fell off. I was about 6 or 7 when I got a hold of scissors and cut my bangs off. Of course, like your friend's kid, I realized immediately I'd get in trouble, so I put glue on my forehead and tried to glue them back on and walked downstairs basically looking at the ceiling, and then my mom caught on and couldn't stop laughing. A toddler I was watching stood next to a tree. He then licked the bark of the tree the way a dog would lick an ice cream cone, full blown, no inhibition. Shocked, I asked him why lick the tree, and he said, I didn't know what it tasted like. He caught me so off guard, so all I could say was, you know what, that's fair. Double quote. I asked him if he liked it. He said, no he did not. My son did that with a worm. He just wanted to know what it tastes like. My kid asked to go to the fish museum. She didn't know the word for aquarium, but I'd say she got the concept across pretty well. Now we don't refer to it as anything else. Reminds me when I told my husband we need to go to the liquid zoo. I thought cotton came from clouds, and the colorful cotton you would catch at sunset. My older sister thought cotton came from sheep, because in Sunday school we glued cotton balls onto sheep drawings. We're all in our 30s now, but it's still an inside joke in our family.